Greetings, Felix Fortuna, just a caveman living in a modern cave, and as caveman when those patterns in the night sky, and this isn't really that, but it's something I find interesting. This is from ORACC, Ashurbanipal and Successors. Ashurbanipal 003. Here are the details. It's a prism from Neo-Assyria, written about 668, from Nineveh, from Ashurbanipal. Quite lengthy, so sorry about that. I, Ashurbanipal, great king, strong king, king of the world, king of Assyria, king of the four quarters of the world, offspring of Esarhaddon, king of Assyria, governor of Babylon, king of the land of Sumer and Akkad, descendant of Sennacherib, king of the world, king of Assyria. The great gods in their assembly determined a favorable destiny as my lot, and they granted me a broad mind and allowed my mind to learn all of the scribal arts. They glorified the mention of my name in the assembly of princes, stags, literally stags, and made my kingship great. They generously granted me power, virility, and outstanding strength, and they placed lands that had not bowed down to me into my hands and allowed me to achieve my heart's desire. They required my priestly services, and my giving them food offerings pleased their divinity. I completed the sanctuaries of the great gods, my lords, clad them with gold and silver, and had long-haired heroes, lion-headed eagles, and tall columns erected in their gates. I made Esara, Emesmas, Egasankalama, and Ehulhul shine like the stars of the heavens. I made every type of temple appurtenance from gold and silver, and I added them to those of the kings, my ancestors. I made regular offerings and contributions more plentiful than those of distant days. I was assiduous towards the sanctuaries of the gods and constantly followed their ways. The god Adad released his rains, and the god Ea opened up his springs. Grain was 5 cubits high in its furrow, and ears of corn were 5/6 of a cubit long. Successful harvests and an abundance of grain enabled pasture land to continually flourish, fruit orchards to be very lush with fruit, and cattle to successfully give birth to their young. During my reign there were plenitude and abundance. During my years bountiful produce was accumulated. Throughout my entire land, on account of abundant trade, for 1 shekel of silver one could purchase 10 donkey loads of grain, 1 homer of wine, 2 sheaves of oil, and 1 talent of wool. Year after year I shepherded the subjects of the god Enlil in prosperity and with justice. I ruled from the upper sea to the lower sea, and the kings from the rising sun and the setting sun carried their substantial tribute to me. I made the people from the midst of the sea and those who live in the high mountains bow down to my yoke. By the command of the god Assur and the goddess Ishtar, the kings who sit upon royal daises kiss my feet, and great rulers from both east and west are anxious for me to be their ally. On my first campaign, I marched to Makan, Egypt, and Melhua, Ethiopia, to Harka, the king of Egypt, and Cush, whose defeat Esarhaddon, king of Assyria, the father who had engendered me, had brought about, and whose land he ruled over, forgot the might of the god Assur, the goddess Ishtar, and the great gods, my lords, and trusted in his own counsel. He marched against the kings and officials, whom the Father had engendered me and had appointed inside Egypt to kill and rob and to take away Egypt from them. He entered and resided in the city of Memphis, a city that the Father who had engendered me had conquered and made part of the territory of his land. A fast messenger came to Nineveh and reported this to me. My heart became enraged about these deeds, and my temper turned hot. I mustered my elite forces that the god Assur and the goddess Ishtar had placed in my hands. I quickly advanced to support and aid the kings and officials who were in Egypt, servants who belonged to me, and I marched as far as the city of Carbonite. Taharka, the king of Egypt, and Cush heard about the advance of my expeditionary force while he was inside the city of Memphis, and mustered his battle troops before me to wage armed battle and war. With the support of the gods Assur, Bel, Marduk, and Nabu, the great gods, my lords who marched at my side, I brought about the defeat of his troops in a widespread pitched battle. Taharka heard about the defeat of his troops while he was inside the city of Memphis. The awe-inspiring radiance of the gods Assur and the goddess Ishtar overwhelmed him, and he went into a frenzy. The brilliance of my royal majesty, with which the gods of heaven and netherworld had endowed me, covered him, and he abandoned the city Memphis, and in order to save his own life, he fled inside the city Thebes. I seized the city Memphis, and then made my troops enter and reside there. As for the kings and governors whom the father who had engendered me had appointed in Egypt, who had abandoned their post in the face of Taharka's tactical advance and had gone to the countryside, literally filled the countryside, where their posts were, I permitted them to serve in their former positions again. I reorganized Egypt and Cush, which the father who had engendered me had conquered. I strengthened its guard more than previously and concluded new agreements with it. As for the cities of Sais, Mendes, and Tanis, which had rebelled and sided with Taharka, I conquered those cities, and I killed the people living inside them with the sword. I hung their corpses on poles, flayed them, and draped the city walls with their skins. As for Sohor Ladari, whom my father had installed as a king in Egypt, and who had plotted evil deeds against the Assyrians, I captured him and brought him to Assyria. As for Taharka, in the place where he had fled, the awesome terror of the weapon of the god Assur, my lord, overwhelmed him, and he passed away. Afterwards, Tanatamun, the son of his sister, sat upon his royal throne. He made the cities Thebes and Heliopolis his fortress, and assembled his forces to fight against the Assyrians' troops who were inside the city Memphis. He mobilized his battle array, confined those people, and cut off their escape route. A fast messenger came to Nineveh and told this to me. For a second time, I took the direct road to Egypt and Cush. Tanatamun heard about the advance of my expeditionary force and that I had set foot on Egyptian territory. He abandoned the city Memphis, and in order to save his own life, he fled inside the city Thebes. The kings, governors, and officials whom I had stationed in Egypt came to meet me and kissed my feet. I took the road in pursuit of Tanatamun, and I marched as far as the city Thebes, his fortified city. He saw the assault of my battle array, and he abandoned the city Thebes. He fled to the city Kipkipi. With the support of the god Assur and the goddess Ishtar, I conquered the city Thebes in its entirety. Silver, gold, precious stones, as much property of his palace as there was, garments with multicolored trim, linen garments, large horses, people, male and female, 2 tall obelisks cast with shiny zahalu metal, whose weight is 2,500 talents, and which stood at the temple gate. I ripped them from where they had erected and took them to Assyria. I carried off substantial booty, which was without number, from inside the city Thebes. I made my weapons prevail over Egypt and Cush, and thus achieved victory. With full hands I returned safely to Nineveh, my capital city. On my third campaign, I marched against Baalu, the king of the land of Tyre, who resided in the middle of the sea. Because he did not honor my royal commands and did not obey the pronouncements from my lips, I set up outposts against him. To prevent his people from leaving, I reinforced its garrison. By sea and dry land, I took control of all of his routes, and thus cut off all access to him. I made water and food for the preservation of their lives scarce for their mouths. I confined them in a harsh imprisonment from which there was no escape. I constricted and cut short their lives. I made them, the people of Tyre, bow down to my yoke. He brought before me his daughters, his offspring, and the daughters of his brothers to serve as housekeepers. He brought his sons, who had never crossed the sea, to do obeisance to me, bow down, I suppose. I received from him his daughters and the daughters of his brothers, together with a large marriage gift. I had mercy on him, and then I gave his sons, his offspring, back to him. I dismantled the outposts that I had constructed against Baalu, the king of the land of Tyre. By sea and dry land, I opened all of his routes, as many as I had seized. I received from him his substantial payment. I returned safely to Nineveh, my capital city. Rulers who reside in the middle of the sea and kings who reside in the high mountains saw the might of these deeds of mine and became frightened of my lordly majesty. As far as Yakin Lu, the king of the land of Arad, Magalu, the king of the land of Tabal, and Sandasarme of the land of Hilaka, Cilicia, who had not bowed down to the kings, my ancestors, they bowed down to my yoke. They brought their daughters, their own offspring, to Nineveh to serve as housekeepers, together with a substantial dowry and a large marriage gift, and they kissed my feet. I imposed upon Mugalu an annual payment of large horses. After Yakin Lu, the king of the land of Arad, had gone to his fate, Azibal, Abibal and Adunibal, the son of Yakinlu, who resided in the middle of the sea, came up from the middle of the sea, came with their substantial audience gifts, and kissed my feet. I looked upon Azibal with pleasure and installed him as the king of the land, Arwad. Damn it. Clothed Abibal and Adunibal in garments with multicolored trim, and placed gold bracelets around their wrists. I made them stand before me. As for Gygas, the king of the land of Lydia, a region on the opposite shore of the sea, a remote place, the mention of whose name none of the kings my ancestors had ever heard, the god Asur, the god who created me, made him see in a dream my royal name. Whoa. On the very day he saw his dream, he sent his mounted messenger to inquire about my well-being. As for the Cimmerians, a dangerous enemy who had never feared my ancestors, and with regard to me, had not grasped the feet of my royal majesty, with the support of the god Asur and Marduk, my lords, he, Gygas, clamped them in manacles, handcuffs, and neck stocks, and sent them before me. Together with his substantial audience gifts, I constantly saw the might of the gods Asur and Marduk. On my fourth campaign, I marched to the city Kerbit, which is inside Mount Harohesta, in the city Harohesta, since Tandaya, their city ruler, had never bowed down to the yoke of the kings, my ancestors, and the people living in the city Kerbit were constantly plundering the land of Yamatbal. With the support of the gods Asur, Bel, Marduk, and Nabu, the gods, my lords, I conquered and plundered that city. As for Tandaya, their city ruler, I took him to Assyria together with captives from his city. I took the people of the city Kerbit, as many as I had carried off, and settled them in Egypt. On my fifth campaign, I marched against Azsiri, the king of the land of Manaea, who had never bowed down to the kings, my ancestors, and who were always answered them with disrespect. I mustered my battle troops. I made them take the direct road to conquer the land of Manaea. I went and then set up camp in the city Dur Asur, and pitched my camp there. Assyria heard about the advance of my expeditionary force and dispatched his army. During the night, in a crafty maneuver, they approached to do battle, to fight with my troops. My battle troops fought with them and brought about their defeat. Over an area the distance of 3 leagues march, they filled the wide steppe with their corpse. By the command of the gods Asur, Sin, and Samos, the great gods, my lords who encouraged me, I entered the land Manaea and marched about triumphantly. In the course of my campaign, I conquered, destroyed, demolished, and burned with fire the cities of Iasias, a fortress of his, Asas, and stronghold of his, Busutu, Asdias, Urkiyaman, Upis, Sihayu, and Nizinura, 8 fortified cities, together with smaller settlements, which were without number. As far as the city of Izertu, I brought people with horses, donkeys, oxen, and sheep, and goats out of those cities, and I counted them as booty. Assyria heard about the advance of my expeditionary force and abandoned the city Izertu, his royal city. He fled to the city of Trana, a city upon which he relied, and took refuge there. I surrounded the cities Izertu, Ermeti, Armaet, and Uzbaya, Izibiah, his fortified cities. I confined the people living in those cities, and thus constricted and cut short their lives. I conquered, destroyed, demolished, and burned that district with fire. I laid waste to an area 15 days' march and poured out over it the silence of desolation. In the course of my campaign, I conquered and burned with fire and plundered the cities of the environments of the city Padiria, which was Manaeans, and taken away and appropriated for themselves in the time of the kings, my ancestors. I returned those cities to the territory of Assyria. I leveled and burned with fire the district of the city Assyrianus, which is between the city Azaka Ani and Mount Harsi, which is before the land of Kumordians, who are in the land of Manaea. I killed Rayad Disadi, the fortress commander, and I plundered Asarnis. I conquered this district of the city Aristiana, flattened its villages, burned them with fire, and plundered them. With the assault of my battle array, I laid waste to the district and made his entire land smaller. I returned safely with much plunder and substantial booty and set foot in Assyrian territory. As for the cities of Beru, Suru Irkbi, and Gisini, cities that were formerly within the territory of Assyria, which with the Manaeans had taken away in the time of the kings, my ancestors. I conquered those settlements. I tore the land Manaea apart from within. I carried off to Assyria their horses, their equipment, and their implements of war. I reorganized those cities and returned them to the territory of Assyria. As for Assyria, who did not fear my lordly majesty, the god Assur and the goddess Ishtar placed him in the hands of his servants. The people of his land incited a rebellion against him, and they cast his corpse into a street of his city. Afterwards, Uali, his son, sat on this throne. He saw the might of the deities Assur, Bel, Marduk, Nabu, Ishtar of Nineveh, and Ishtar of Abela, the great gods, my lords, and bowed down to my yoke. For the preservation of his own life, he opened up his lands to me, and made an appeal to my lordly majesty. He sent Erisena, his heir designate, to Nineveh, and he kissed my feet. I had mercy on him. I dispatched my messenger with a message of goodwill to him. He sent me his daughter, his own offspring, to serve as a housekeeper. As for his former payment, which they had discontinued in the time of the kings, my ancestors, they carried it before me. I added 30 horses to his former payment and imposed it upon him. At that time, as for his Beher-Shardi, a city ruler of the Medes, and Sarharti and Parhia, 2 sons of Gagi, a city ruler in the land Sahi, who had cast off the yoke of my lordship. I conquered and plundered 75 of their fortified cities. I captured them alive and brought them to Nineveh, my capital city. As for Andaria, the governor of the land of Oratu, who had advanced and marched during the night to conquer the lands of the cities Pumu and Kulimeri, the people living in the city Kulimeri, servants who belonged to me, inflicted a heavy defeat on him during the night. They did not spare anyone. They cut off the head of Andaria, and they brought it to Nineveh before me. On my 6th campaign, I marched against Urtaku, the king of the land of Elam, who did not remember the kindness of the father who had engendered me, nor did he respect my friendship. After famine occurred in the land of Elam, and hunger had set in, I sent to him grain, which sustained the lives of people, and thus held him by the hand. As for his people, who had fled on account of the famine and settled in Assyria until it rained again, and in his land and harvest grew, I sent those people who had stayed alive in my land back to him. But as for the Elamite whose aggression I had not thought possible, literally, I did not speak with my heart, a fight with whom I had not contemplated, Bel-Ikisi, the Gambulian, Nabu-Sumu-Eris, the Sendabaku, governor of Nippur, servants who belonged to me, and Marduk-Suma-Ibn, a eunuch of Urtaku, who had sided with him, incited Urtaku, the king of the land of Elam, who with lies to fight with the land of Sumer and Akkad. Urtaku, whom I had not antagonized, set his attack in motion and hastily brought war to Kardanasi, Babylonia. On account of the assault of the Elamite, a messenger came to Nineveh and told me the news. I was not concerned about this news of Urtaku's assault, because he had regularly sent his envoys with messengers of peace before me. I dispatched my messengers to see the king of the land of Elam. He went quickly, returned, and reported to me an accurate report, saying, the Elamites cover the land of Akkad, all of it like a swarm of locusts. Against Babylon his camp is pitched, and his military camp is laid. To aid the gods Bel, Marduk, and Nabu, gods of mine, whose divinity I constantly revered, I mustered my battle troops and set out on the road. He heard about the advance of my expeditionary force, and then fear overwhelmed him, and he returned to his own land. I went after him and brought about his defeat. I drove him as far as the border of his land. As for Urtaku, the king of the land of Elam, who had not respected my friendship, whom death called on a day that was not his fate, who came to an end and withered away while wailing, he no longer set foot upon the land of the living. In that year his life came to an end, and he passed away. As for Bel-Ikisi, a Gambulian, who had cast off the yoke of my lordship, he had laid down his life through the bite of a mouse. As for Nabu-Suma-Eris, the Sendabaku, governor of Nippur, who did not honor my treaty, he suffered from dropsy, that is, full water. As for Marduk-Surma-Ibn, his eunuch, Urtaku's eunuch, the instigator who had incited Urtaku to plot evil deeds, the god Marduk, the king of the gods, imposed his grievous punishment upon him. Within 1 year, they all laid down their lives at the same time. The angry heart of the god Assur had not relented against them, nor had the mood of the gods Ishtar, who had encouraged me, became tranquil towards them. They overthrew his royal dynasty. They made somebody else assume dominion over the land Elam. Afterwards, Teaman, the very image of the Galu demon, sat on the throne of Urtaku. He constantly sought out evil ways to kill the children of Urtaku and the children of Humbanhaltus II. The brother of Urtaku, Umanapu, and Tumaritu, the sons of Ertaku, the king of the land of Elam, Kuduru and Paru, the sons of Umanaladusa, Humban Baltus II, the king who had come before Ertaku, together with 60 members of the royal family. Countless archers and nobles of the land of Elam fled to me before Teoman's slaughtering and grasped the feet of my royal majesty. Wow. On my 7th campaign, I marched against Teomun, the king of the land of Elam, who had regularly sent his envoys to me concerning Umanigas, other people's names, the son of Ertaku, the king of the land of Elam, and Kuduru and Paru, the sons of the same people, Humban Haltus II, the brother of Ertaku, former king of the land of Elam, asking me to send back those people who had fled to me and grasped my feet. I did not grant him their extradition concerning the aforementioned. He sent insults monthly by the hands of Umbadaru and Nabudamek. Inside the land of Elam, he was bragging in the midst of his troops. I trusted in the goddess Istar, who had encouraged me. I did not comply with the utterances of his provocative speech. I did not give him those fugitives. Teoman constantly sought out evil deeds, but the god Sin also sought out inauspicious omens for him. In the month of Deuzi, the 4th month, an eclipse of the moon lasted longer than the 3rd watch of the night, until daylight. The god Samas saw it, and it lasted like this the entire day, thus signifying the end of the reign of the king of the land of Elam and the destruction of his land. The fruit, the god Sin, revealed to me his decision, which cannot be changed. At that time, a mishap befell him. His lip became paralyzed, his eyes turned back, and a seizure had taken place inside him. He was not ashamed by these measures, and that the god Assur and the goddess Istar had taken against him, and he mustered his troops. During the month of Abu, the 5th month, the month of the heliacal rising of the bow star, the festival of the honored queen, the daughter of the god Enlil, the goddess Istar, to revere her great divinity, I resided in the city Arbela, the city that her heart loves, whom they reported to me news concerning an Elamite attack, which he, Teoman, had started against me without divine approval, saying, Teoman, whose judgment the goddess Istar had clouded, spoke as follows, saying, I will not stop until I go and do battle with him. On account of these insolent words that Teoman had spoken, I made an appeal to the sublime goddess Istar. I stood before her, knelt down at her feet, and made an appeal to her divinity, while my tears were flowing, saying, O divine lady of the city Arbela, I, Ashurbanipal, king of Assyria, the creation of your hands, whom the god Assur, the father who had engendered you, requires, whose name he has called to restore sanctuaries, to successfully complete the rituals, to protect their secrets, and to please their hearts. I am assiduous towards your place of worship. I have come to revere your divinity and successfully complete your rituals. However, he, Teomun, the king of the land Elam, who does not respect the gods, is fully prepared to fight with my troops. You, the divine lady of ladies, the goddess of war, the lady of battle, the advisor of the gods, her ancestors, the ones who speak good things about me before the god Assur, the father who had engendered you, so that at the glance of his pure eyes he desired me to be king. With regard to Teomun, the king of the land of Elam, who placed a burden on the god Assur, the king of the gods, the father who had engendered you, he mustered his troops, prepared for battle, and sharpened his weapons in order to march to Assyria. You, the heroic one of the gods, drive him away in a thick of battle, and then raise a storm, an evil wind against him. The goddess Istar heard my sorrowful plight and said to me, Fear not. She gave me confidence, saying, Because of your entreaties, which you were directed towards me, and because your eyes were filled with tears, I had mercy on you. During the course of the night that I had appealed to her, a dream interpreter lay down and saw a dream. He woke up and then reported to me the night vision that the goddess Istar had shown him, saying, The goddess Istar, who resides in the city Arbela, entered, and she had quivers hanging on the right and left. She was holding a bow at her side, and she was unsheathing a sharp sword that was ready to do battle. You, Ashurbanipal, stood before her, and she was speaking to you like your own birth mother. The goddess Istar, the sublime one of the gods, called to you, instructing you, saying, You are looking forward to waging war. I myself am about to set out towards my destination, the battlefield. You then, saying to her, saying, Let me go with you wherever you go, O lady of ladies. She replied to you, saying, You will stay in the place where you are currently residing. Eat food, drink wine, make music, and revere my divinity. In the meantime, I will go and accomplish this task. Thus I will let you achieve your heart's desire. Your face will not become pale, your feet will not tremble, you will not wipe off your sweat in the thick of battle. She took you into her sweet embrace and protected your entire body. Fire flared up from in front of her. She went off furiously outside. She directed her attention towards Teamon, the king of the land Elam, with whom she was angry. In the month of Elul, the 6th month, the work of the goddess, the festival of the exalted god Asur, the month of the god Sin, the light of heaven and netherworld, I trusted in the decision of the bright divine light, Sin, and the messenger of the goddess Ishtar, my lady, which cannot be changed. I mustered my battle troops, warriors who dart about in the thick of battle by the command of the deities Asur, Sin, and Ishtar. I set out on the path against Teamon, the king of the land Elam, and took the direct road. Before me, Teamon, the king of the land Elam, set up a camp in the city Bit Imbi, and he heard about the entry of my royal majesty into the city Dare, and fear took hold of him. Teamon became frightened, turned around, and entered the city Susa, in order to save his own life. He distributed silver and gold to the people of his land. He redeployed his allies who marched at his side to his front and amassed them before me. He established the Ulaya River as his defensive position and kept me from the watering places. By the command of God Asur and Marduk, the great gods, my lords, who had encouraged me through auspicious omens, dreams, Egeru oracles, and messages from ecstatics, I brought about their defeat inside the city Tel Tuba. I blocked up the Ulaya River with their corpses and filled the plain of the city Susa with their bodies like Baltu plants and Asagu plants. By the command of the god Asur and Marduk, the great gods, my lords, in the midst of his troops, I cut off the head of Teamon, the king of the land Elam. The brilliance of the god Asur and the goddess Ishtar overwhelmed the land Elam, and they, the Elamites, bowed down to my yoke. I placed Umanigas, Humbanikas II, who had fled to me, and grasped my feet on his Teamun's throne. I installed Tumaritu, his third brother, as king of the city Hidalu, with the chariots, wagons, horses, mules, harnessed broken steeds, and equipment suited for war that I had captured between the cities Susa and the Ulaya River with the support of the god Asur and the goddess Ishtar, the great gods, my lords. By the command of the god Asur and the great gods, my lords, I joyfully came out of the land Elam, and salvation was established for my entire army. On my 8th campaign, I marched against Dununa, son of Bel-Ikisi, in the land of Gambula, and which had put its trust in the king of the land Elam, and had not bowed down to my yoke. With my mighty battle array, I covered the land Gambula in its entirety like a fog. I conquered the city Sapi Bel, his fortified city, whose location is situated between rivers. I brought Dununa and his brothers out of the city alive. I brought out his wife, his sons, his daughters, his palace women, male singers and female singers, and I counted them as booty. I brought out silver, gold, property, and the treasures of his palace, and I counted them as booty. I brought out eunuchs, his attendants, engineers, and his food preparers, and I counted them as booty. I brought out all of his artisans, as many as there were, the bond of the city, and stepped, and I counted them as booty. I brought out oxen, sheep, goats, horses, and mules, which were without number, and I counted them as booty. I did not leave a single person of his land, male and female, young and old, and I brought them out and counted them as booty. I captured alive Masira, the chief archer of Teamon, the king of the land Elam, who was stationed inside the city Sapi Bel to provide support to land Gambula and guard Danuna. I cut off his head and beat it against the face of Danuna, the ally who could not save him. As for that city, I destroyed, demolished, and dissolved it with water. I annihilated it. I laid waste that district and cut off the clamor of humans from it. With the support of the gods Asur, Bel, Marduk, and Nabu, the great gods, my lords, I killed my enemies and returned safely to Nineveh. I hung the head of Teamun, the king of the land Elam, around the neck of Dununa, with the spoils of the land Elam and the booty of the land Gambula, which I captured by the command of the god Asur. With singers performing music, I entered Nineveh in the midst of celebrations. As for Umbadara and Nabu Darmik, the envoys of Teamun, the king of the land of Elam, by whose hands Teamun sent insolent messages, which I had detained before me by making them wait for the issuing of my decisions, they saw the decapitated head of Teamun, their lord, in Nineveh, and madness took hold of them. Umbadara pulled out his own beard, and Nabu Darmik stabbed himself in the stomach with his own belt dagger. As for the decapitated head of Teamun, I displayed it opposite the citadel gate of Nineveh as a spectacle in order to show the people the might of the god Assur and the goddess Ishtar, my lords, the decapitated head of Teamun, the king of the land of Elam. As for Apliah, son of Nabu-Salam, grandson of Marduk-Apla-Idim, Moradash-Baladan, whose father had fled to the land Elam before the father who had engendered me, after I had installed Humbon-Nigus II as king of the land Elam, he, Umanigus, seized Apliah, son of Nabu-Salam, and sent him before me. As for Dununa and Samguna, son of Bel-Ikisi, Gumbalians, whose ancestors had harassed the kings, my ancestors, and moreover, who themselves disturbed my exercising the kingship, I brought them inside Baltil, Assur, and the city Arbela, to praise me in the future. As for Manu Ki Ahi, the deputy of Dununa, and Nabu Usuli, the city overseer of the land of Gumbolu, who had uttered grievous blasphemies against my lords, I ripped out their tongues and flayed them inside the city Arbela. As for Dununa, they laid him on a slaughtering block inside Nineveh and slaughtered him like a lamb. As for the rest of the brothers of Dununa and Apliah, I killed them, chopped up their flesh, and sent them out to be a spectacle in all the lands. As for Nabu Naid and Bel Itor, sons of Nabu Suma Eres, the son of Baku, governor of Nippur, whose father, the one who had engendered me, had stirred up Ortaku to fight with the land of Kad, the bones of Nabu Suma Eres, which had taken out of the land of Gombalu to Assyria, I made them, his sons, crush those bones opposite the citadel gate of Nineveh. As for Umanigus Humbonikus II, for whom I performed many acts of kindness, and whom I installed as king of the land of Elam, and who forgot my favor, did not honor the treaty sworn by the great gods, and accepted bribes from the lands of the messengers of Simas Suma Ukin, my unfaithful brother, my enemy. He sent his forces with them to fight with my troops, my battle troops, who were marching about in Babylonia and subduing Chaldea. Secretly, he, Ummanegus, dispatched them to Undasu, a son of Teaman, a former king of the land of Elam, and Zazaz, the city ruler of the land of Pilatu, Paru, the city ruler of the land of Hilmu, Atametu, the chief archer, and Nesu, a leader of the troops of the land of Elam, to fight with the troops of Assyria, and he gave them orders. Umanigus said to Undasu as follows, saying, Go exact revenge from Assyria for the father who had engendered you. Undasu, Zazau, Paru, Atametu, and Nesu, together with messengers of Samas Surma Ukin, my hostile brother, set out en route and take the direct road. My battle troops who were stationed in the city Mangisi, which is inside the territory of the city of Sumander, which came up against him, brought about their defeat. They cut off the heads of Undasu, a son of Teamun, a former king of the land of Elam, Zazazaz, Paru, and Atumetu, and they brought them before me. I dispatched my messenger to Humbanikus II regarding these matters, and he detained the eunuchs of mine who I had sent, Marduk, Sur, Ursur, and did not give a reply to my words. The gods Assur, Sin, Samas, Bel, who was Marduk, Nabu, and Nergal, the gods who support me, rendered a just verdict for me concerning Humbanikus II. Tamaritu rebelled against him and struck him, together with his family, down with the sword. Tamaritu, who was even more insolent than him, sat on the throne of the land of Elam. Just like him, Umanigus, he, Tamaritu, accepted bribes, did not inquire about the well-being of my royal majesty, went to the aid of Samas Suma Ukin, my unfaithful brother, and hastily sent his weapons to fight with my troops. As a result of the supplications that I had addressed to the gods, Assur and the goddess Ishtar, they accepted my sighs and listened to the utterance of my lips. His servants rebelled against him, and together struck down my adversary. Endabibi, a servant of his, who had incited rebellion against him, sat on his throne. As for Tamaritu, the king of the land of Elam, who had spoken insolent words on account of the cutting off of the head of Teamun, which a low-ranking soldier of my army had cut off, with his brothers, his family, and the seeds of his father's house, together with 85 nobles of the land, Elam, who marched at his sides, who had flown away from the weapons of the god Assur and the goddess Ishtar, to praise their great divinity. They crawled naked on their bellies, together with Marduk Sar Ursur, a eunuch of mine, whom they had taken away with them by force, and they grasped the feet of my royal majesty. Tamaritu handed himself over to do obeisance to me and made men appeal to my lordly majesty to be his ally. For just one eunuch of mine, the gods Asur, Sin, Samath, Bel, who is Marduk, and Nabu, the gods who support me, compensating me 1,000-fold, I allowed Tamaritu and as many people as there were with him to stay in my palace. Endabibi, who sat on the throne of the land of Elam after Tamaritu, knew about the might of my weapon that had prevailed over the land Elam. And as far the Assyrians whom I had sent to aid Nabu Bel Sumuti, son of Marduk Apli Edini, Meridosh Beladon, with whom they used to march about protecting his land like a friend and ally, and whom Nabu Bel Samatu had seized by guile during the night and confined in prison. Endabibi, the king of the land of Elam, released them from prison, so that they would intercede with me, say good things about him, and in order to prevent me from doing harm to the territory of his land, he sent them before me by the hands of his messengers, with messages of goodwill and peace. Iatu, son of Hazazel, the king of the land of Kedar, who does not obeisance to me, approached me about his gods and implored my royal majesty. I made him swear an oath by the great gods, and then I gave the god Atar Samayan back to him. Afterwards, he sinned against my treaty, did not respect my kindness, and cast off the yoke of my lordship. He refrained from inquiring about my well-being and withheld audience gifts from me. He incited the people of the land of the Arabs to rebel with him, and they were repeatedly plundering the land of Muru. I sent troops of mine who were stationed on the border of his land against him, and they brought about their defeat. They struck down with the sword the people of the land of the Arabs, as many as had risen up against me, and set fire to the pavilions and tents and their abodes, and thus consigned them to the god Gira. They carried off without number oxen, sheep, and goats, donkeys, camels, and people. They filled with them the whole extent of the land in its entirety, to all of its borders. I apportioned camels like sheep and goats and divided them among the people of Assyria, so that without my country they, the Assyrians, could purchase a camel for 1 shekel, or even a half shekel of silver at the market gate, the female tavern keeper for a serving, the beer brewer for a jug of beer, and the gardener for his bag of vegetables, were regularly receiving camels and slaves. As for the rest of the Arabs who had fled from my weapons, the heroic god Era struck them down. Famine broke out among them, and they ate the flesh of their children on account of their hunger. The deities Asur, Sin, Samas, who is Marduk, and Nabu, Ishtar of Nineveh, and Ishtar of Arbela, the great gods, my lords, decreed curses, as many as were written in their treaties, accordingly to them. As for Eliuta, hardship befell him, and he fled alone. Abiyate, son of Teri, came to Nineveh and kissed my feet. I concluded a treaty with him to do obeisance to me. I installed him as king in palace of Iatu. I imposed upon him gold, eye stones, pappardillu stone, coal, camels, and prime quality donkeys as annual payment. As for Ammi-Laden, the king of the land of Kedar, who, like him, Iatu, had turned hostile and repeatedly plundered the land of Muru. Kaimas Kalti, the king of the land of Moab, a servant who belonged to me, who had brought about his defeat in battle by invoking my name, which the deities Asur, Sin, Samath, Bel, who is Marduk, Nabu, Ishtar of Nineveh, and Ishtar of Arbela had made great, captured Ammi-Laden and the rest of his people who had escaped the slaughter. He placed their hands and feet in iron fetters and sent them to Nineveh before me. Natnu, the king of the land of Nabateans, whose location is remote, heard about the might of the gods Asur and Marduk, who had encouraged me, the one who had never sent his messengers to the kings, my ancestors, and who had never inquired about the well-being of their royal majesties. He now sent to me his messengers with greetings and kissed my feet. He was constantly beseeching me loudly, lordly majesty, to conclude a treaty and peace agreement, and to do obeisance to me. I myself looked with pleasure upon him and turned my benevolent face towards him. I imposed upon him annual tribute payment. At that time, the armory that is inside Nineveh, which Sennacherib, king of Assyria, the father of the father who had engendered me, had built, had become old, and then its foundations had become weak, and its walls had buckled. I removed and the collapsed sections of that armory, which had become old, and whose foundations had become weak. I reached its lowest course. I built and completed it from its foundations and its crenellations. I strengthened its foundations more than previously. I wrote out an inscribed object bearing my name and the praise of my heroism, with which, through the support of the deities Asur, Sin, Samath, Bel, who's Marduk, Nabu, Ishtar of Nineveh, Ishtar of Abela, Ninurta, Nusku, and Nergal, I constantly marched through the lands and established mighty victories, and I deposited it for future days. In the future, may one of the sons, grandsons, great-grandsons, or great-great-grandsons, one of the kings, my descendants, whom the god Asur and the goddess Ishtar nominate for ruling over the land and the people, renovate its dilapidated sections when this armory becomes old and dilapidated. May he find an inscribed object bearing my name, and then anoint it with oil, make an offering, and return it to its place. Just as I found an inscribed object bearing the name Sennacherib, the father of the father who had engendered me, anointed it with oil, made an offering, and placed it with the inscribed object bearing my name. You should be just like me, find an inscribed object of mine, and then anoint it with oil, make an offering, and place it with an inscribed object bearing your name. May the great gods, as many as are recorded with this inscribed object, constantly bless your kingship and protect your sign. As for the one who destroys an inscribed object bearing my name or bearing the name of my grandfather, makes it disappear by some crafty device, or does not place it with an inscribed object bearing his name, may the great gods of heaven and the netherworld overthrow his kingship and make his name and seed disappear from the land. This is the date, Abu, the 5th month, the day of Epidemi of Belsunu, governor of the city of Hidana, and these are all the witnesses, 649 BC. And I'm sorry that was so long, but thank you if you made it all the way.